Okay then, good morning, good afternoon, good evening and welcome. Today I'm going to show you a new little spawn object which you see on the left here. I just noticed a bug with it as well, god damn it. So if I just fly up it'll trigger and it's a drill that explodes out of the wall and starts spawning bad guys at you. Which will be a little kind of like surprisey, like haha, gotcha, when you go past and they pop out. So I'm gonna finish making this because at the moment it doesn't do what I want it to do. And I need to make one that faces the other way and one that comes out the ground and one that comes out the ceiling. And then I'm going to need to actually implement it. Put it in the levels. Boom! Needs a better blowing up end as well. But at the moment when it explodes out it's all part of the animation and stuff that it all breaks up and kind of comes out, and I want to change that to particles because it will be potentially look better but also be easier to implement and take up less artwork and memory and gubbins like that. So yeah, so I'll show you the animation first. This is what it looked like, just like a tile, just sort of sat there, depending on which skin I have selected it will be a different tile. I've not actually set up those ones yet. It'll be a different tile depending on which skin I set it to, and it should just blend into the level and you'll never see it coming, kind of thing, hopefully. As long as I do enough of these so you don't get to learn or sort of remember and recognise which tiles are being used. Because if it's always that tile, and every time you see that tile, but oh, that might be a spawning object. Oh, I better better be careful. But I need to essentially come out of whatever tile I just want to drop the thing out of. So yeah, the idea will be this turns off, which I'll do in code by essentially setting its attachment to nothing. Then I'll turn that off. Or is it that I... Yeah. So that'll turn it off, and then it'll spawn a whole load of particles in here which will just sort of jump out and kind of fall down and go blub 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 blub. And then it'll trigger this animation where it goes opens up and lots of bad guys come out. Yeah, which will hopefully look really cool and surprise the player and be fun and stuff. Maybe, hopefully, we shall see. Let's show you how the spawners work. So the room I was in just now is that one. So this is just a testbed level. I dump shit in here if I want to test how it works, because then I can test it in isolation from the rest of the actual games. There's lots of little bits and bobs of stuff laying around. Here's the actual spawner itself and the AI setup. So this object here spawns the player. This is a trigger. When you fly over it and hit it, it triggers whatever it's pointed to, which is let's just open this up, dink. So on contact with the player it hits this trigger, which triggers this alarm, which is a naff way of doing it. I should have done it with events, but I've ended up using alarms, and that goes to this little bit of code here, donk, which first of all checks if it can be triggered, because sometimes you don't want it always to be like triggered. You can turn a trigger on and off, as it were. So this checks that it can be triggered, then creates a temporary queue, copies the target queue, which is just essentially queues are just a data structure that contains a list of all the things they can loop through, it then loops through that queue, dequeuing each object, popping the top one off the queue, as it were, into a temporary variable, and it then triggers alarm 10 of that temporary, of that or whatever that target was. Again, I should have used user events instead of alarms. Would have been a better way of doing it, but I did that like way back in the beginning, and it's just kind of stuck because I end up doing it through all of my objects, and it takes far too long to go back. And by the time I was like, oh wait, I've done this the wrong way, it was like, it's too late now. I've done it for a couple of hundred objects. Wah! So yeah, it'll just dequeue that target, and then whatever that target is, it'll trigger its alarm. Now, if that target, because of the nature of objects in Game Maker, if whatever the target is, if its alarm 10 doesn't contain anything, it'll just do nothing. So I can safely assign whatever objects I want to this queue, as long as I've actually. Well, yeah, I mean, it can, just that bit. If I only want the thing to trigger the first time you go over it, I set it to trigger once, which probably, in the case of that trigger there, I only want it to trigger once, but because every time you fly over it, it will trigger the spawner to spawn, and it's already spawned, it will just ignore being triggered to spawn, so it will fail safely, as it were. This is a handling the objective arrows. So there's a big green arrow that points to where you're supposed to go and what you're supposed to do, and these are just essentially a couple of listy things that handle that. But the main thing is, I have a queue called target, and whatever you put in that queue, it'll get triggered when the player flies over it, or an AI if it's set to trigger an AI, because I can have AI trigger stuff as well. So that's what that does. That's just putting the object. Actually, which object is it? That one? No. 6. How did I? Yeah. So normally, the actual bit that handles the AI, because this is just a graphic. This thing here is the actual thing that spawns the AI, and this is the thing that tells it when to spawn. So this is what I call a obj trigger pulse. So this thing, when it gets started, it just has a lot of the similar queue target triggers, and it has a trigger time you can set, and a type so this triggers alarm 0 every time trigger time hits, triggers alarm 0, and alarm 0 triggers whatever trigger type alarm is, which will then either be 9 or 10, whether you want to trigger it off or on. And this has wait, what's that? Why is that? No, that's not what it does. It triggers that. So this is if I start with it turned off. Here, am on is off. Then here's the 9 and 10s, which means that I can have something like this object here. The player flies over it. That can then trigger this object, and then that turns it on or off. As I essentially have this everything can trigger everything kind of way of doing things, because it's like modular kind of scripty thing. If everything can trigger everything else, you can make all sorts of complicated paths of things being triggered. So this, and in the case of here, it starts turned off in this setup. This trigger pulse is am on is false, so it won't be on, so it's not spawning right from the start. But this thing will just regularly, once it's turned on, it will keep every trigger time interval, it will trigger on or off via the same target queue setup, whatever thing it's pointed at. And this is pointed at instance thing, that bad boy. And this is the actual thing that does all the spawning, which is lots of complicated stuff going on in here. So where does it start? So it has some basic setup stuff, which includes getting a spawn area, which is that thing there, that square there. So when an AI spawns, it gets sent to the spawn area, which is a place it can safely pathfind to. So it will get to here, sit there, and from once it hits there, it then decides to move to a defend area, which are these circles here. These are areas I set up, and the AI, and they have a like formation position, and the AI will just move between these things, and sort of patrol around, unless the player gets spotted, and then it will move to whichever one the player's at and defend that area. So yeah, there's a lot of. So let's see, again, Ammon, Drew. This is if I so I can turn it off and on. We have a spawn burst variable. This is for this particular spawner. It wants to chuck out lots at the start and then just steadily pass them out. So it can have a spawn burst and then it will just chuck out loads of the things. And then we have the how many it can spawn, how often it spawns them, what type of object it spawns. This is again like modular. Spawn object variable holds whatever object you want it to spawn. So if I go into creation code, I can then tell it, okay, spawn the basic pod, spawn the melee pod, and you just change it there when you set the thing up to spawn different things in different places without having to go in and change and create different spawners. Pass parent I don't think I use anymore. That was a bit of, so I think that's redundant, because it used to be I would you have a system of moving from one point to the next. So let's say the AI is down here and it wants to move to here and it's got this big wall to go through. I originally had a system of having a little teleporting object, and it would just like move it from there to there, but that was way too complicated and silly, and I realised that actually the easiest thing to do is just to have a despawn object. It patrols to the despawn object, gets killed, that despawn object then is connected to a spawner, and that then spawns a new version that was identical to the old version, and you can't tell the difference. It appears to have been the AI has moved from one point to the next. Then I realised that that was just stupid because, like, again, too complicated, and I went with the easiest solution, which is I'll show you in one of these levels, if I can find the no, that's not it. Where have I put it? So, no, yeah, that guy, yeah, this level has it. So the final solution to teleporting or transporting a AI from one section of level it can't reach to another, as you can see here, we have this entirely enclosed area, which spawns AI, which will be stuck hanging around here until the player has opened this door via this switch here. I've added these two tubes, which if I remove the tiles, you'll see is just actually a gap in the block out, a gap in the collision, so that there's a pathfinding route through here, and the AI just goes out. And this object here is a piece of collision that only hits the only stops the player. So it looks like there's a great big block of rock with just some tubes, and the AI is going through these tubes, and that's essentially underneath what it is, but the player can't go through. Now, it does have a slight flaw of the player's going to crash into these and not be allowed through, and I need to kind of figure out a way of indicating that the player can't go through here. Because yeah, I mean, they're going to come around here, they're going to be like, oh, they can't go through that door, and if they miss that switch, they'll come down here and be like, oh, I can get in that way, and they'll try and go through the tube, and they won't be able to get through the tube, and it'll be like, why can't I go through the tube? That's stupid. So I need to figure out a way of actually indicating somehow to the player that you can't go through this tube. It's not allowed. Let's show you how the AI is actually implemented on this level though. So this is the standard spawner, which is like a little box that opens up, and this is the spawn limit for this particular spawner. It's going to spawn AI pod new, which is this little dude here, and it'll do that. It'll keep 2 of them alive, so every time you kill one it'll spawn another one, as long as there's always 2 coming out of this spawner. And this slot is a formation slot, so every spawner gets given a different formation slot start point, so that there's a unique slot for each AI, and it'll just pop in and float around these circles. Yep. Okay, let's go back to the actual spawner object itself, which is, again, here's the bit that handles formation slots. Got a few control variables for whether or not the player's around, whether it can reach the player, things like that. That is redundant. I no longer use that. That was the despawner object. This is the thing that would effectively kill the AI and respawn a copy of it elsewhere. I don't use that anymore. This is a I find it useful to have a version of the creation code here, so when I just create something I just right click, edit it, grab the creation code, copy it in, and then modify it instead of having to remember what the bloody various variables for the creation for the code are. So when it starts it triggers alarm 0 and 1, which are these two. Does it trigger at the same time? What order does it trigger them in? Both at the same time. So this one, path checks to the player, which I have as a user event 3. Ding, which just goes reset the next time it's going to trigger. So this would be like every second it's just checking if it can reach the player, and it stores whether it can reach the player in the variable can reach. This is a simple bit of script which, if it opens, there we go, all it does is attempts to make a path grid to the 2 variables you've sent as an argument, which is player's position X and Y, and then return true or false based on whether or not it's found the player. So essentially all this event does is alarm 0 triggers every time path time, which is, there it is, that variable there, which is room speed times 1, which will be 1 second. So every second it triggers event 3, or it triggers alarm 0 to cause event 3, which calls this function to set the variable can reach to whether or not it can see the player. That seems kind of convoluted. There must be a simpler way of doing that. This creates a linked list. I don't need that anymore. That's redundant. Fortunately it only does it once. I really don't think I use that anymore. So essentially what I had done when I used to be using the despawners was that it would create a list of all the various despawners and try and create a pathfinding routes between them all to figure out how it can get from where to where and where to send the player. But it was vastly complicated because it's essentially just looping through, finding what despawners it can reach, looping through those despawners, finding where those despawners can get to, seeing how far its path can reach, which in a big complex game where you have a lot of places to go and things to do and etc, where you might kind of need that, but it was way too overblown and would crash and hang and generally be a giant dickhole, so it doesn't do it anymore. And in fact I'm pretty sure, in fact I don't use it anywhere, and I don't even use that object at the start, so pretty much it'll attempt to create a list of all the AI despawn objects, and as there aren't, that'll be list of 0, so that loop won't execute. That will, but again it's going to produce a bunch of useless data that isn't used anymore, so I will go into here and make that a 0. Or in fact, comment it out completely. So that's never going to get called. So I'll add that there so to kind of say it's not being. In fact, I'll comment the entire thing out as well. I could delete it, but you know, I leave it around in case I change my mind later. At least until I've checked this into. I'll leave it for the time being. I'll probably come back and remove it. So that'll just sit there now, just constantly checking if it can reach the player. I should probably double check if actually that can reach variable is used anymore. But this trigger pulse guy is gonna tell this guy to spawn periodically by pinging whichever one of these it is. So this thing gets triggered and it asks itself if it's on. Am I on? Yes, I'm on. Call event 0. Event 0 goes, I'll create an AI. So it first of all checks the size of its spawn list to see how many AI it currently has. And if it's less than the spawn limit, it's like, hey, I can spawn something. It also checks the spawn burst variable to be, in case to ignore that and just spawn loads at once. And if it's decided it's going to spawn something, it goes, yeah, I'll just pop into this if loop and spawn the shit out of something. Which, yeah, whatever object type is held in the spawn object variable is going to get created, and a reference held in the variable new, which you can then interact with. Now, the spawn area, which is this little box here, it's going to grab a random point within that. So it will move to a random XY point within the bounding box of that spawn area. I tell the spawned AI that its parent is this whatchamahooge spawner, and apparently I then set a spawn by variable that's the same thing. Oh wait, I know why I did that. Okay, so this again is the redundant spawner despawner problem thing that I used to have. So effectively, if the despawner would destroy the instance of the AI and trigger a new instance of an AI that was a duplicate of it. But of course, that would then be told that it was the parent of the second spawner and not the original spawner. So this would hold the variable of the original spawner that originally created the AI kind of thing. So it would be linked back to its start point, even though it had been destroyed and duplicated and moved to somewhere else. Again, that's probably redundant now, as I no longer use that spawning, moving around thing. I just have a hole in the wall. The spawn list is again just the list of links that the spawner has, which at the moment I mostly just use to check the size of it, see how many things have been spawned. Then it gives its formation position is whatever the available slot is, and whether or not it's got a shield. These are all set. Then I'd set it to state spawning, set it on a path to spawn XY, set its speed, start the path, and this basically, once it's spawned, will set it moving from this object here to somewhere here. So this will just like initialize it and gets it going. This tells, for a spawner that isn't this spawner object, whatever graphic is assigned to this spawner object, to open and close and look like it's been spawned, which normally is like a thing with a door and I open it and it comes out, but for this is something different. So, but yeah, I mean essentially whatever spawn display it's got gets triggered. I think it's the spawner itself that sets the spawn display, but what else does this do? Okay, it's got a bunch of other stuff for things like finding out what the next free slot is, so it can set available slot. That's doing the same thing that that's doing. Is that just an old version of that? Weird. Okay. It's a debug thing for drawing the links to the link list that I no longer use. In fact, that doesn't draw anyway because I've disabled that. That's all debug stuff. So yeah, that's what the spawner does. And this thing, so it creates its hit point so you can shoot it. That's not. Let's look at its parent quick. Ding. So yeah, the spawn display bit is set here. This thing will find the nearest move spawner to itself, so it's like, oh, you're next to me there, you're my nearest. Sets it as its parent, then tells it that it's the spawn display object. And then it goes, then those two are linked, and whenever that thing spawns, gets triggered by that thing to spawn a thing to there, it will then tell this thing to do its open animation, or in the case of this, it won't, because it only plays that once, and bink. No, wait. There's the ding, there it is. Yeah, so alarm 0. No. No. Yeah, okay, so that I think that ends my rambling explanation of how I spawn my AI and stuff. So now I have to figure out how to change this so that it actually does what it's supposed to do. Yeah, okay, what I'm going to do is export this and import it into Game Maker. Wait, it was in that folder. Why am I going all the way out? It's there. Set the origin. Go. Set the sprite sheet. There we go. That's that done. Now I'm going to need a bunch of new particles, which I'm going to add in here. So SPR part real spawner rock. Let's go with that, and that's that one. Put it at the center, and which sprite sheet do I want you to go in? God, I think I normally put them in sprite player because that way, yeah, let's do that. Pop another one in, SBR, derp, DS, no, SBR, part, DS, let's go ice, that's that one, bloop, bibbity, boo. Another one in, SBR, part, DS, deep. And deep is that one. Bibbity, boo. Let's check what other ones I've. It's just stone and crystal. Yep, okie dokie. Although that crystal looks shit. I'm going to have to redraw that crystal sprite so that it actually looks like shards of crystal. But we'll worry about that once the actual functionality of the code is working, and then all I'm doing is making it look pretty. Donk, 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 diddly sploosh. Okay, so this needs a particle emitter. Actually, let's create the particles there first. Scripts. Boom. These bad boys. So these are all the particle settings. I'm going to create a new one. Global part DS rock. So yeah. Ding. Okay, so that created. Now what I'm going to do is grab a bunch of stuff that I already know done and know works. So that bad boy. Now, is it animating? No, it's not. I do want a random. Why do I have a random one set for thrust? Surely it makes more sense if they. I'm gonna set that to false. Because that's a explosion-y type anim. It makes more sense if. Yeah. Yeah. No, let's have a look what that sprite actually is. Well, that can't really see much from that. Okay. What was that? What was you? You're the same goddamn sprite. Wonder why I did that. This is the problem of having a big project that you spend ages on, is like you forget what half of the stuff does and you have to sit there going, wait, what, that does that, and that's gonna, oh right, okay, yeah. So, I'm gonna go ahead and copy all of that as well. But I'm gonna add part type gravity. Yeah. And we're going to give it an out of 1 for the moment, and we'll see how that looks. And the direction, I think, is just 270 to point straight down. Yeah. So let's pop the right variable in all of those as well. So speed is how quick you want to move, and I'll leave that until I see how it moves, but that's probably a bit low. But yeah, it's definitely a bit low because I want them to kind of explode out. So 2 and 4, that's a nice kind of wiggly amount of I want it to rotate as well, don't I? Which is part type orientation. So from 0 to 360, so that'll be when it gets spawned. It can be in any rotation at all. How quickly do I want it to rotate? I want it to rotate fairly quickly, and I think 3 will be a reasonable amount of angle to add each step. I don't want them all turning at the same speed, so 1. This is angle relative. I'm just going to put that false because now this will actually get changed in the at the point at which it spawns them. I'm going to set the direction it can spawn based on what direction of the spawner is facing, but at the moment that will get left like that. Lifetime, I think that's in steps. Let's go room speed times 2 and 3, 4. So they'll last between 2 and 4 seconds. That seems a bit long. Let's go 1.5 and 3 seconds for how long the thing is alive for before it's removed. And that alpha ring is fine. That's essentially, it's gonna not for like 0.8 of its 80% of its life. It'll be full alpha before it fades away at the end, which will work great. I think that's all I need to do with that to create it. Now potentially I can either duplicate this a bunch of times for each different sprite type, or at the point at which I create the particles and actually kind of spawn them, I can change this variable here to a different sprite, I think, which might be a easier way of doing it. Of course, all I'll be doing is just copying and pasting this and then changing that, and it means if I need to go back and modify it, I have to yeah, let's leave it like that and just change the sprite on the fly. Okay, I'll move you over here out of the way a bit. Derp. And then I need to actually give it particles. Let's close these logos off. So where's a thing that has particles that I can just copy and paste from? I know. This bad boy. So dink. Now I have several particle systems. I'm going to use the particle system above, which should place the particles in front of the spawner and the player and stuff like that, which I think will look better than if they're kind of behind them. So yeah, that's pen it above for there, and then you're going to need to always remember when you create a particle system to remove it afterwards, otherwise, like in the case of the AI, it has its own little particle system thing, and every time you create an AI, it'll create that particle system. If you don't destroy it, then when you remove this object, then you've still got it left in the particle system left in memory, and you just sit there leaking little bits of memory, which rapidly build up into lots and lots of memory. Yeah, I used to have so many problems with memory leaks in the game because I hadn't been cleaning stuff up properly, that if I started the game it was using just over 200 megs of memory, but after an hour of playing it was using a gig. After 3 hours it would crash its system because it just leaked memory all over the damn place. So that's created and destroyed. Now I have to use it. So I have to figure out where where do I want to use it? So that will trigger change of state to open. So this is my state-driven animation system, or how I handle the skeleton animation system within GameMaker, which is the spine skeleton animation stuff. I just, whatever animation is just finished, bung it in that variable, and then in a switch you compare it to look at what it was. So I've just finished animation idle. I look at state. If state is equal to idle, then I play animation idle. If state is equal to open, I play animation open. If state is equal to dead, I also play animation open, because in the case of this thing, you won't be able to destroy it while it's idle. Otherwise, I'd have an idle explosion animation. If it's open and state equals dead, then it plays the explode animation. Otherwise, it plays idle open. So this is all just look what animation just finished, and then look what the state is, and then that's what you use to base the next animation pick, as it were. This isn't the cleanest example of how I do that, but it works. Let's see if the AI's yeah, I mean that's but it just says if it's just finished playing the animation die, then destroy itself. Otherwise, play a random idle animation. Because it's got like 4 idle animations and just keep looping through playing, where it waggles its arms around and stuff. And it'll just like play through those different things, and yeah. So, in fact, when it gets triggered, which is both here and here, derp, derp, derp. No. State, that sets state to open at some point, at whatever point in the idle animation I'm at, which is about 5 frames long. It won't have actually, when the animation gets set to open, derp, derp, derpity derp, which is basically there and there. Okay, I'm gonna add. Am I? What? Okay, that's not using any. I'm gonna add a user defined. I'm use 15. Now, if I'm on a parent object, as I would be with this thing, and I'm adding a user event, I'll start with event 0 and work down. That way I know that. And if I'm on a child object, I'll start with user 15 and work up. That way I avoid like accidentally overriding a parent's user previous user event. So this will spawn particles. Is that how you spell particles? That is not how you spell particles. That is how you spell particles. How's that for a moment? Now we're going to have to extend this if... Nope, wrong one, this one. Extend this and put events user 15 in there. Close it off. You know what I'm going to do, because I like copy and pasting so much. Boom. There we go. So now, if it's idle and it gets triggered on by being opened, as soon as the animation open starts, event user 15 gets called. So then in event user 15, I will first of all set skeletal animation slot. Where's that? No, well, I've gone past it. attachment set. That's it. Attachment set. Derp derp -1 derp, and the slot is called hole. Yeah. Hole. Set hole to empty. So that should effectively, in code, click that button, which stops displaying that attachment. Or that button, which stops displaying that attachment. But it's one of those buttons, either way. I've just created a key. Yeah. Wait a minute, wait. Am I doing this dumbass way? I'll just do that. Let's stick to the way I was doing it. I'm confusing myself. So, okay, that is a mess of crap. Let's ignore that. We just want that. Doopity boop de boop de boop. Right, now, you don't have any more. Okay, so in here we doop. Right. So this is telling that's wait. That's not what you're supposed to put there. What is my dumbass doing? Putting that wrong. Right. So, okay. So no. Wait. What the f is? Put the right things in here. So the particle system I'm using, which is the particle system I set this to, is past this above. So that's that. I've just put it in the to permit above variable, so that goes there. I'm spawning a bunch of rocks, that's there. How many rocks do I want to spawn? About 12 of the fuckers. Goes there. That all sounds about right, except for the position. So I'm not going to be rotating this or scaling this or doing anything like that, so I can have a nice fixed position. So the XY variable is the origin, so it's x plus 32, 64, 96, x plus 96, y minus 94. So if I just go x plus 96, y minus 64, and that's var RK x equals. So I'm just going to create a little buffer variable. So I could so that's a buffer variable, that gives me my start point, and then y is plus or minus 64, x plus or minus 32, because I'm essentially creating a ellipse that fills this area here. Scratch that. This is the wrong way of doing it. I need to put it in the create thing so that when I parent this to the other ones I can change it later. RP left equals x plus 64. RP right equals x plus 128. RP top equals y minus 128. RP bottom equals y. So now when I create a child object I can set new variables there and I don't have to change this here, because if I go into here the x minimum is RP left, the y minimum is RP top, wait a minute, that's x max, so that's RP right top, RP bottom. Okay, so what's happening now is I'm not going to need to change this, whatever different left, right, up, down spawner I do, that I add graphics to, as long as the attachment is always called whole, it'll get turned off, and this will then create a bunch of particles that it'll chuck out. Now before I do, I need to actually change a couple of things, which are let's just check the entry for, that's annoying, part type orientation. Yeah, no, that is what I need. So I need to change that and change it back afterwards. I also need to change that and change it back afterwards. Now I probably don't need to change it back afterwards, because if any time I'm using it is for these spawners and I set it before I use it, I probably don't need to change it back after I've used it, but it's better to do that and kind of better be safe than sorry, as it were. I don't want to not do this and then go and use it later and not be setting this and then it starts spewing out random different sprites. So I'm just going to call my particle, set that variable, that way goes in there, and it's SBR part ds rock particle dir equals, so in this case, so I want to have a basic what direction the particle's going in. They're being thrown to the right, and right is 0. Now in child I'm probably going to have to, I'll have that set to like 90, or it'll be 180 to go left, 90 to go up, 270 to go down. So if I just copy that, pop it in here and here. Now I need an amount of wiggle. It's not orientation, it's direction, you dumbass. Dumbass. Goddamn dumbass. So how much of an angle? That's going to be from there to about there, to about there, about there to about there, so that's about 45 degrees each way. So minimum is minus 45 degrees, and that's add 45 degrees. So now when it creates the particles, it's going to create them with a direction of plus minus 45 degrees from there. So it's going to create them in giving them a direction of there, with a speed of between 2 and 4. So some will just sort of drop out here, some will drop out there. They'll sort of boomf in this direction in a sort of explosion. Different angles with different speeds for a different amount of life, as they kind of then gravity pulls them down and they fall. I hope, but yeah, I wonder if that's going to work as it is now. What have I forgotten? Have I forgotten anything? Don't think so. I think that should do it. So I'm going to run the game and we will see what happens. So it should just load me directly into... Oh, are you kidding me? Why has it done that? Is it because I haven't set the skin? Okay, let's just take off and see what... Well, it made the rocks, so that worked. Okay, let's fix where I fucked up, shall we? Yeah. So, the first problem is... I did not set the skin. So, skeletal... Animation... Skin set. One. Bloop. So that's that fixed, I think. I hope. Let's just pop to testbed and actually, because I didn't put you back on top of you. So that should be that. And let's compile it again and see if it works. Now, unfortunately, that's not pointing to the right place. I'm just gonna do an exploity thing so that I stop getting that message and then exit so it saves. Now when I load in, here we go. Okay. So when I fly up, this should explode with rocks. Drill should come out. AI should come out. Hey! Yep. Now, I might need to tweak it a bit. I'm gonna have to watch it a bunch of times and be like, how's it look? What's wrong with it? So, watching closely, when I fly up, it does it all a bit too quickly. Spews everything out a bit too quick, and there's nothing particularly satisfying about destroying it. It just sort of falls apart quickly. Right, so definitely do something about the particles. Okay, I'm going to go back to the particle settings. Burped, 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 burped. Down. They're a bit too... burp. Derp. Okay, so speed's too quick, definitely too quick. So I'll halve that to 2. Life is too long. They fell down for a little while, so I'm going to make that 1, and then that 2. The effect of gravity, it probably pulled them down a bit too quickly. So I'm going to make that 0.5. Now I'm going to check the entry to see. Yeah. Yep, that's fine. So it will half a step each, half a pixel each step should not pull it down too fast. Yeah, I think that's all fine and good. The only other thing I wanted to do was change the direction wiggle. Or do I? Let's watch what that looks like. Let's see what that looks like, and then so now when I fly upwards, yeah, no, I'm gonna go with no. No, I didn't like the look of that. I think. Let's watch it again. Let's watch it again. So, I don't think they came out fast enough. They all just sort of, yeah, most of them just kind of fell out there, which isn't where. Okay. Right. What I'm gonna, I reckon. It's not a question of speed, it's this fucker. I want them coming out straight or going up. I don't want them being thrown out downwards. I think that's the problem. Because essentially I was, some of the particles are being basically thrown this way and then pulled by gravity, so they're just going bleh, bleh, and I want them going bing, blump, bing, blump. Like that. Yeah, which, so I think by just doing that and that and that, that'll look better. So this time, let's see what happens. It should explode upwards and outwards a bit more. No, they all just fucking fell down the same goddamn way. Fuck it. Okay. Now I'm actually gonna make a change to the room quick as well, to help like I'm gonna put a tile underneath there so that it'll hide think. Yep. There we go. So that will just sort of give me a better idea of what it'll actually look like in the game in a proper level. Now I'm going to go back to speed and put it back to 2 and 4 because they're not being thrown outward enough. And I'll run it again and we'll see what happens. As I kind of like, I'll go back and do something later, but I never did. Okay, so let's see what happens when I fly upwards. Yeah. It was better. It was better, but not sure. Let's do it again. Let's watch it again. Watch it again. Watch it again. And boom. It's all just a bit flat. It doesn't really explode. And I'm going to make it explode outwards. Right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to increase that to 66 and I'm going to add a plus 22 there. to give it more upward lift, I'm going to change speed to 3 and 9, so some are proper thrown out. And I'm going to drop the gravity to 0.25 so that they don't immediately plummet to Earth. And see what that looks like. This time, what does it look like? Boom! Yeah, look at that! Look at that! That was better, wasn't it? Let's watch that again. Okay. Fly up and boom! Yeah! Okie dokie. I want to change the increase the life and because I saw alpha off, which means that this needs to be like 9.5, so they just like alpha off quite late in the day, as it were. Life, I'm going to make them live longer. Do I want to leave that? Yeah, I did quite like the way they explained that 3. I think what I'm going to do is increase how many there are though. I'm going to have 17 of them. Yeah, 5 more. Let's run that and see what that looks like. Okay. See what it looks like this time. Boom! Yeah! That's more like it. Okay, let's watch it again just to make sure. Yeah, that's pretty good. You just like, as soon as you trigger it, it explodes out and they start shooting you and you go, oh fuck, I have to shoot them, no. So what else do I need to do to this thing to make it work? I think I just need to implement it now really. I think that's all I need to do, put it in the levels. Yeah. And actually the thrust which I changed, remember earlier I said why is that thrust particle on random, and yeah, now that actually looks a lot more like a thrust thing. That's, yeah, that looks pretty cool now. I'll show you quick how I do the puff of smoke when it first fires off. Because that's really cool. So, yeah, let's go back to Game Maker and find the player object. Now, the way I have player object is it's a parent object, and then the actual ship you have is down here. So here's the ship you start with, which is the Wasp, and then that has all its own bespoke settings, which is generally just how much thrust it has and its physics properties, and then it parents to player objects, and then I just make all my changes to player objects, and that changes everything for all the different ships. So somewhere in here we have the controls. So keyboard flight controls. Drag that down a bit. Now, somewhere down here we apply particles. Yep, here it is. So if first thrust, which when you get to here the first time you've pressed if you're not pressing a key, so I haven't pressed up, then it sets first thrust to true, so the next time I press the key it will fire this off, but it'll only do it once because then it'll immediately set first thrust to false, so as long as you're holding the key down it only does it once. I set the direction in which I want the particles to go, which is taken from the image angle, and then add 270 because image angle of see, I drew the sprites all facing up like this, but in Game Maker facing that they should all be facing right, which has caused a kind of a problem. So if you do a game yourself and you want to do a ship like this, just try and bear in mind you should actually have them flying to the right, because that's direction 0 in Game Maker. Not sure why. It made more sense to me to have direction 0s up, but for whatever reason 0's right. So yeah, and then it just creates, we set the properties for the puff of smoke particle, which if we let's just find where that is, puff of smoke, think there it is, which I think is just in the same, no, it's in setup particle thrust. So that's this little sprite here, which is tiny and you can't really see it, but that's like a little collection of clouds of smoke that I drew. And it selects a, so it's not animated or stretch, and it selects a random one. Then it has its basic colour and setup things. Then we give it a direction, which is whatever the player's direction is, or the opposite of the player's direction, flight direction, so downwards. The direction of thrust. And then a plus or minus of 40. That means it throws some out to the side as it puffs out. And then the orientation, because the puffs of smoke are kind of they're not circular or square, they're more sort of a rectangle, sort of flattened, because that gives the effect of just a layer of smoke kind of being pushed downwards in that little puff, as it were. So whatever the player direction is, plus 90 to get the correct orientation, and then you just create a burst of them, and then turn it off so that it only does it once, and then you get that cool little puff of smoke effect, which yeah, there you go. So now I need to go and have some lunch, so I will come back later and do some more setup and implementation of that drill spawner. Yep. Okie dokie. See you all later.